Please welcome to the stage the AAAS Chief Public Affairs Officer and Chief of Staff, Andrew Black.
Good afternoon, everybody. Listen, on behalf of the entire AAAS team, those here in Phoenix and around the world who have made this all possible, welcome to Phoenix. Welcome to the AAAS 2026 annual meeting, and we hope that you had an enjoyable first full day here. We are gathering thanks to the support of all of you, along with a coalition of wonderful sponsors and partners, and I'd like to take a moment to recognize them once again. The 2026 annual meeting host university, Arizona State University, the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School of Public Policy at Georgia Tech, the George Washington University, Florida International University, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, the Science Philanthropy Alliance, UL Research Institutes, Digital Science Research Solutions, KFU PM, Morgan State University, and the American Institute of Physics. Our deepest thanks to all of these organizations for their generous support of this year's annual meeting. I also want to acknowledge again our friends at the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation for supporting the work of the students you're about to hear from today, and for the support provided by the Joshua E. Neimark Travel Assistance Endowment to bring our speakers here today. Dr. Joshua Neimark was born in 1931 in Seabright, New Jersey. From an early age, he demonstrated extraordinary intelligence, but he was also prone to serious respiratory disease. He completed public school with distinction, then received an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering from MIT, a master's degree from Caltech, and a doctorate from MIT. He succumbed to his illness in April of 1961 at the age of 30, and his doctoral dissertation was published posthumously. This award, established in his memory by his sister, Dr. Edith D. Neimark, is intended to assist young scientists in attaining careers in their chosen fields, a goal that Joshua Neimark did not live to achieve. Dr. Edith Neimark was a pioneering developmental psychologist. In 1957, she published an article in the journal American Psychologist entitled simply Discrimination Against Women. In this article, Dr. Neimark, who by that time had been turned down for multiple academic jobs, argued that the price of any system of discrimination impoverished the field of psychology because it excluded many talented and competent people. She went on to hold faculty positions at some of our nation's finest institutions, including over a quarter century at Rutgers University, where she was the chair of the psychology department at Douglas College. Dr. Neimark was a fellow and a longtime benefactor of AAAS right up until her passing almost a year ago at the age of 96. I had the great fortune of spending quite a bit of time with Dr. Neimark over the years. She was simply one of a kind. We are grateful for her support, and we are especially pleased that her legacy continues in the name of her beloved brother. Now, if you've been coming to this meeting for the last few years, you know a panel moderated by my colleague and friend Holden Thorpe is going to be provocative. I've heard the word barn burner used. Now, what we haven't done yet is put Holden up here with a bunch of graduate students. And I'm here to tell you right now, all bets are off. I first met this particular cabal of graduate students last summer. They had just pulled off one of the most impressive feats of grassroots advocacy the scientific community has ever seen. And I will let them tell you all more about it. But suffice it to say, we thought it was long past time in our 178-year history to give the AAAS plenary stage to some young blood. Please welcome to the stage Science Editor-in-Chief Holden Thorpe and 5 members of SNAP, the Scientist Network for Advancing Policy.
All right. Clear eyes, full heart, can't lose. Give it up for Miles Arnett from the University of Pennsylvania. Izzy D. Tomasi from Cornell University. J.P. Flores from the world's greatest university, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Aaron Morrow from the University of California, Los Angeles. And Alex Rich at Yale University. All right, and can the old man work his notes app? All right, so as Andrew said, it's taken 178 years, but we finally have a AAAS plenary with graduate students. And on behalf of the association, which I don't formally represent, I apologize for the fact that we're just now doing this. We're here to talk about SNAP. I'm sure a lot of people want to know about it, but I've got a button here that says, ask me about SNAP. It's the Scientist Network for Advancing Policy. Tell me about SNAP, its goals, how and why you got involved. And I don't know, are there other people here from SNAP?
Oh, I think there are.
Yeah. So we're going to start with Miles. So Miles, take it away.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, we've been told to introduce ourselves. So hi, everybody. I'm Miles Arnett. I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate over at the University of Pennsylvania and also the president of the Penn Science Policy and Diplomacy Group, which is our grad student science policy organization there. First of all, I want to say thank you very much, Holden, for having us up here today, and thank you very much, Andrew, for that amazing introduction and for all the help you've given us over the past year. Now, I'm happy to start the conversation today about what SNAP is and where it came from, and then I'll pass the baton on later on to one of my wonderful friends up here. But in terms of what SNAP is, I'll give you the end point first. So today, SNAP, or the Scientist Network for Advancing Policy, is a coalition of over 200 grad students representing over 20 institutions across the United States. And our goal really is to mobilize for large-scale initiatives in science policy and science communication that are meant to, one, create change, and two, more importantly, reconnect scientists to the communities they came from and the ones they serve. As for where that actually came from, that's another reason we're very grateful to be up here today, is because this is really a big full circle moment for us. SNAP got its start last year at the AAAS annual meeting in Boston. And it started out as just a series of very informal conversations between different university science policy groups, so mine from Penn, Aaron's from UCLA, JP's over at North Carolina, and many others not up here today, but fortunately in the audience, about ways that we could help each other, ways that we could share resources on the things we were doing in common, so we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel all the time, but also the things that we were doing that were very unique, so we could benefit from the different ideas we all brought to the table. Now that ethos of resource sharing and drawing on each other's ideas is still very much a part of what SNAP is today. But I think the other really important thing to note about our origin story is the moment in science policy that SNAP got started. I'm sure everybody here remembers what it was like last February as we started to get news of grants being canceled, federal scientists being fired left, right, and center, and proposals of funding cuts to scientific institutions in the country that we'd never seen before, which fortunately have not gone through to that extent, but obviously none of us knew that at the time. I mean, it was a moment of real instability, uncertainty, and chaos. And I think at that time, in addition to the resource sharing, SNAP gave us a community that we could work from and build off of. People to react to the news to, people to lean on when our labs or other people we knew were affected. And ultimately, I think out of that community, as the news kept coming in and so much of it seemed to be bad, what really grew out of that was a desire for action. And that core ethos of action is really what's connected SNAP through to this day. And to start talking about one of our first action initiatives, I'll pass it over to Izzy.
Hi, so my name is Isako D. Tomasi. Everyone calls me Izzy. I'm an agricultural researcher in the third year of my PhD at Cornell University. I work at the Boyce Thompson Institute that's right on Cornell campus. So when I joined SNAP, actually it was 1 year ago tomorrow that my PhD advisor, who was a federal scientist with the USDA, was fired. And we were all experiencing that really tumultuous moment last year. For me particularly, I felt like I wanted to be able to do something. And another really interesting part about when my PI was fired was that I was reading comments on social media, about, well, what were these scientists even doing? What were these people even doing? What, it's probably for the best, things like that. And I'm realizing, this is on like the local social media too, like, the next door. And I realized like, wow, right, yeah. And I realized like, wow, the people in this community where these research institutions are located have no idea what the work that the scientists who live in these communities and are, their institutions are in these communities are doing. So myself and Emma Scales, as well as some other people from the Cornell Advancing Science and Policy Club, that's our local SciPol org, we came to SNAP with this idea like, hey, why don't we do this op-ed publishing campaign, right? We'll target early career researchers and we'll try to get them to write op-eds and letters to the editor for their local hometown papers, talking about who they are as scientists, talking about their origin story and how the community that they came from helped to shape the scientists that they became and what they care about. And yeah, everyone in SNAP, like the first meeting, like that we talked about this at was like, oh my gosh, yes, let's absolutely do that. And
lightning in a bottle.
Right, it was lightning in a bottle. Like they were like, yes, absolutely. And we decided to have the target publication date to be Barbara McClintock's birthday, which is June 16th. And yeah, it spun out from there. We were able to connect to people at organizations all over the US. We had over 600 scientists pledge to publish, so we were able to share resources with over 600 scientists who had signed up. We had over 300 scientists attend science communication and op-ed writing workshops that we personally hosted, and that we actually had other people help with like different Zoom trainings and stuff like that. And it resulted in actually over 200 pieces being published in 45 states, as well as DC and Puerto Rico. Yeah, it was incredible. It was really incredible. Actually, and shortly thereafter, we had another nationwide initiative where actually during the August recess, the congressional August recess, it was predominantly early career researchers go to visit their congressional home offices and actually speak to the offices to advocate for science funding. And we actually were able to organize 54 visits in 29 states of early career researchers. I think we had over 150 that participated, so this was training that we gave to a lot of these participants. Also had never done anything like this before, but they recognized that we were in a time where we needed to be doing things like this. So yeah, those are just a couple of the initiatives that really started SNAP and got us going. But yeah, what's really incredible about it too, is that we are a non-hierarchical organization. We're grassroots. We're like 97% grad students. And what's really incredible is that any one of our members can start an initiative. You come to our meeting and you say, hey, I was thinking, what if we try X, Y, Z? And then people in the meeting will be like, yep, let's do that.
20 Slack reactions in 5 minutes.
Exactly. And, it's just really incredible, to be able to mobilize so quickly and to get things actually happening quickly. So we're a grassroots, nonpartisan org that is just really welcoming, and we're all excited to, give support to others in our org who have ideas. We all want to participate, and it's really incredible. It's unique. Yeah.
Don't look at me. Let's go Alex next.
Sure. Hi. I'm Alex Rich. I am a fifth-year PhD candidate at Yale University. I'm trying to defend, so I don't have fancy titles anymore. I can't be doing that. Anything that has touched science policy or institutional policy nonsense at Yale, I've somehow been involved in. Yeah, so I kind of got involved in SNAP in a, as you can imagine from that title, roundabout way. I was largely in kind of science education policy world prior. I think my experience, which is probably quite canonical for a lot of PhD students, right, is you come to grad school and you have this cohort of like the most brilliant, passionate, capable scientists you've ever met. And I'm like, wow, these people have all the right tools, they have all the right passion, they love doing science. They're gonna be the ones curing cancer in 30 years, and I'm so excited I get to do this with them. And then you see, over many years, the light drain from a PhD student's eyes. And you're like, why? Like, why is that just like an accepted part of the PhD? And that was my experience kind of coming in and what I was thinking about with getting involved in student government and institutional policy and really just thinking about it's everything but the science. Like it's all the noise of academia. It's all the, lack of mentorship. It's, co-authorship arguments. It's the pressure of publishing, sexual harassment, discrimination. Like it's everything but the science. And I think that to see, folks leave academia, leave research, leave science, leave their PhD programs, or just lose the passion for what they're doing because of everything that's not the actual science was pretty devastating. So that was kind of my experience in getting into this thought work and just wanting to support the people that should be curing cancer in 50 years. Or sooner, preferably. But yeah, so I kind of was in that frame of mind. I had been involved in some also grassroots national stuff, the Grad Coalition, which supports the Grad Caucus in the House of Representatives, thinking about things like, okay, what the federal government's role is in all of this, the financial structure of graduate education, and how that doesn't incentivize things like mentorship. And that was the the headspace I was in going into AAAS last year. We had learned that week that, indirect costs and the cap on that, the environment last year in Boston was crazy. And so I get thrown into a Slack channel while I'm at AAAS, and it ends up being the best group of people I've ever worked with. It's been a lot of fun. Because I think to think about all of those issues where my head was at, and then all of these people really thinking about science policy and science communication and connection with the public and realizing how interconnected those things really are, that a lot of that is the incentive structures that we have in research and in academia and kind of how that intersects with public trust in higher education. To me, that was striking. And to be able to work on that with you get a bunch of type A people in a room. You don't have to delegate anything, we just do it, it's crazy. So that's been super, super fun, and I think, really just SNAP has created an awesome space for that, to learn by doing, kind of a sandbox where we get to fail and try again, and really get to test things out and do right now, which is both cool, and I think meets the moment right now. So that's what I love about it.
Yeah, I can take it from there. I'm Erin Morrow. I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate in cognitive neuroscience at UCLA. I'm also co-president of the science policy group at UCLA. And I think similar to Miles, I first started engaging with SNAP because I was interested in sharing resources between different science policy groups at our universities. I was a new co-president, a little scared, and loved having that support across the country. But then I started to talk to the folks more, and I felt this overwhelming sense of relief that there were people, student leaders, that were thinking about the long game, not just the short game. And to me, the long game looks like rolling up our sleeves and doing that hard work of relationship building, trust building, where it's been fractured before, where the relationships might be non-existent, where there's not infrastructure for them. And it's rethinking the systems that we are situated in as graduate students. How can these systems better prepare us for the world that we're about to enter, currently in? So not just the world we're at the lab bench sitting by ourselves, but also this highly interconnected, polarized, real world. How can we better prepare ourselves for that to meet our neighbors where they are? And something that I think is really great about working with early career researchers in particular is that they, by nature, they're closer to their roots, right? They're a little, even though some of us are, the light is fading from our eyes, there's often still a little bit of that why we originally got into science, where's the spark, right? And a lot of times, the interesting thing is that why is actually who growing up around us in our communities inspired us to get into science and got us excited about this in the first place. Maybe it's a local high school science teacher. Maybe it's the curator at the science museum in your city. Maybe it's a parent. And so I think that our proximity to those relationships helps us really think through those connections and trust building really deeply. And that's what I love about the McClintock letters, for example, and getting the chance to really write those op-eds. So I'm just really grateful that we seem to be on the same page about thinking about the long game.
Cool. I'm JP. I'm defending from the greatest university in the world in about a month.
Go Heels.
Go Heels. I'm also the co-founder of a nonprofit organization called Science for Good. And if you're curious about that, Emma Courtney, who's also a SNAP member, can also chat about that later at our SNAP reception, which we'll talk about. But the way that I got into policy and the reasons why I joined SNAP is I'm a first-generation college student, right? I am a scientist of color, and I really wanted to figure out how can we use policy as a lever to diversify the STEM workforce. So that's kind of how I started thinking about policy and doing all these side projects outside of my science. Around this time last year, Emma and I were actually at AAAS in Boston trying to figure out how we were going to organize Stand Up for Science, those March 7th rallies. Yeah, you're saying, oh my God, because it was a lot. I want to be clear, we've since left that to start Science for Good. But the mission of Science for Good is very much aligned with the mission of SNAP, right? How can we connect science and society in ways that are ethical and trustworthy? I also think I'm the only academic trained person up here, hence why I don't have a coat on. Like, I'm very underdressed like most academics, sorry. But yeah, I'm in SNAP because of all these amazing people that have expertise in different fields, right? I can talk to Emily Sellon at Notre Dame about science communication because you could tell she's so passionate about it. I can talk to Amanda Finn at University of Alabama, Birmingham, because I can ask, hey, you're also in a school in the South. How are you dealing with science policy, right? So that is why I joined SNAP. It's an amazing resource filled with amazing students.
Wonderful. All right, so you all wouldn't be here unless your PIs were supportive of this, and good for them, because I know you've all got a lot of work to do in the lab, and they want you to do it, but they're smart enough to know that universities are schools, and so we should want our students to do what they want to do when they graduate rather than what their PI wants them to do. But I hear a lot of stories about grad students who want to do this kind of thing whose PIs are not supportive. So tell me a little bit about the culture of science and whether it's really set up to support what you all are doing, and we're going to start with Erin. Yeah.
I personally tend to abide by the rule, ask for forgiveness, not permission. I think a lot of people relate to that, that I've spoken to. I love the research that I do. I'm passionate about it. I care about it. But I also have a North Star and a compass that I feel like I can personally come back to that tells me, it's a little feeling in my chest, I need to come back to work on this, thinking about these broader questions about science and society, and I get to do that with SNAP. And so I spend time and energy doing that. And I share the wins with my PI, but I don't feel the need to tell more than what's necessary, and that's a product of academic culture in a way, and the incentive structure, as Alex talked about before, in academia. Even if I feel in my heart of hearts, which I do, that science communication and policy engagement will deeply enrich and enhance my work in the lab, my PI is not incentivized to have me spend time on that. And that's because the incentive is to run experiments and publish papers. And so if we don't have a broader change of that incentive structure, we're not going to see that meaningful shift. And I think that there's a broad range of experiences that people have with their PIs. Some are incredibly supportive. Some of my friends up here have incredibly supportive PIs. There are some people who don't feel comfortable at all coming to these kinds of events because they don't feel like they're able to. But yeah, experiences may vary, but there are resources and things that we're thinking about with how to improve these conversations and improve the incentive structure within academia. Another thing that I feel is really important, is that I feel like there's a fundamental misalignment of the training that we receive as graduate students and the jobs that we're eventually going to enter into. I was talking about this with JP yesterday. You know, maybe only 30 to 40% of graduate students are going to end up in academia, much less at tenure track faculty positions. And so we need to acknowledge that. You know, in my program, we talk about academia being the path and maybe industry, maybe if we're lucky, being a second path. But there's so many opportunities for graduate students to pursue. And we need to acknowledge that. And we also maybe need to rethink the training that we're having if we're preparing for the jobs that are actually out there.
Anybody else on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to speak further on this as well. You know, like Aaron said, I feel very fortunate in the PI that I have because his mentality towards mentorship and towards training is very much, you know, my responsibility as your PI is to get you where you want to go. And that means that he's given me the flexibility to be very involved in science policy at my university, to do things like spending a lot of time on SNAP. And I don't think that's because he has any great personal interest or passion in science policy or science communication. That's just how he approaches his job. But you know, as you alluded to earlier, Holden, the reality is that we up here are a very biased sample. I mean, we're here because our PIs have, you know, in some cases given us the freedom to do these kinds of science policy, science communication activities outside of what's supposed to be our full-time job, or in some cases we've sort of taken that freedom. But the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of people who do not have that experience, where they have to either hide everything they're doing outside the lab from their PIs, or they have to fight a kind of constant uphill battle to prove to their PIs and even often to their lab mates that the things they're doing outside of experiments, outside of research time, are worthwhile, are things that have any value at all. I mean, I know people at Penn who are not here at this conference today, not because they weren't interested in it, not because they don't have that passion, that motivation for science policy, communication, diplomacy, et cetera, but because they were barred by their PIs from coming, or because they didn't even bother asking because they knew the answer would be, no, you can't go, and why would you even want to waste time doing that? And you know, I think the reality is that that mentality has to change if we're going to be able to see more acceptance of the other 60 to 70% of people who do not go into academia. And you know, for me personally, and the way we think about it at Penn is that it's an awareness problem as much as anything. So to that end, we've been working on what we call the PI's Guide to Science Policy, the idea being that this is just a document where if you are a grad student who's interested in science policy, you can hand this to your PI, and it'll hopefully answer a lot of the questions they might have about it that they've never thought about before. So, you know, what is this field? What does science policy actually mean? Why do you need scientific training if this is the discipline you want to go into? What's the value of this for me as someone who's still in academia? And, you know, hopefully getting to that fourth stage of, well, all right, how can I then help you get there? And that's something we've been very proud of developing because, again, it's legitimizing these entry points. You know, I only learned about science policy, the existence of the field, when I got to grad school. And I've been interested in science and policy separately for my entire life. But the reality is that if I hadn't gone to Penn and found the science policy student group there, I might still not know about it today. I might not learn about it for another 20 to 30 years. And if I was a PI who had that experience, and who had gotten, you know, decades deep into my academic career, and the first I heard of this field was one of my grad students coming to me and saying, you know, I want to spend a large amount of my time in my PhD where I could be running PCRs, doing this instead, I could understand having some reservations. So I think getting after that root problem is really what we need to be doing here.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and I think, you know, something I'll add is it's sort of, like there's the piece of there's folks not going into science communication or science policy careers knowing that's an option and support for them, and I think that's hugely important. But I think the other thing, and this might even transition us a little bit into thinking about what's the culture shift that we're hoping to see here, is the folks who are staying in academia, the folks who are going into industry research, do they need that mindset as well of science communication and policy as part of what we do as scientists? I would argue yes. Everything is political. When you pump gas at the gas station, it's political. Science is political. Science is political. Let's move past that. I think, you know, it's not a novel idea that science communication training, and so many people have been doing this work for decades. People have created the science communication toolkits. Like, there's so many amazing groups doing all of this work. It's out there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. But the amount of times that, there's sort of this cycled conversation of science communication training, and should it be required, should it be required? At this point, I mean, grad school is frankly a little too late. Like, in my undergraduate years, never was there a conversation. It was, you need to learn how to titrate. I've never used that again. Like, I mean, come on. I beat pop boop on my computer all day. I've never touched a wet lab thing in my life. But basically, like, I mean, there's this set of skills. We learn to titrate because it teaches us about how to operate in the lab, how to ask questions, how to use methods to approach something. We take how to take notes on what you're doing in lab as a method, right? Like, it's not about titrating. And when we think about the schema we're building about what does it mean to be a scientist, and we start doing that in our undergraduate years, even before that in high school, and I know we have a lot of high schoolers here. I think that's something that was just not, science communication was never brought up for me in undergraduate, at no point. And not just to the public, and that, we do science in a way that's funded by the public, and, we should be talking to the public, but to other scientists. Like, I think we've all gone to the conference and heard the talks and been like, I have no idea what they were talking about. And had moments where, we're meeting with other scientists and they're within our own field and we don't know what they're doing because we can't talk to each other about, and that inhibits scientific progress, to be able to collaborate because we can't talk to each other about what we do. And as things get incredibly more complicated in science, and in terms of the methods we're using, and like, that's huge. So, I mean, it goes beyond science communication to the public and policy. It's even to each other, if people want to think about it like that. But embedding science communication training, in my opinion, in the undergraduate years, I know we have strong feelings, so I'll let y'all chime in on that too. But like, at this point, I think that's a what do I do on Monday thing from if you take away many things from this panel, like, there are resources out there. Think about your undergraduate curriculum. Can I add a half-credit course to, what the intro physics course that everyone has to take? You have an intro biolab, every undergraduate scientist has to take, whatever. How do I integrate some science communication training into that to just get people thinking about it, that it's something we can be doing? That to me just feels like it's past time for that conversation.
Great, okay. Is that everything for that question?
I have so many thoughts, but
I think
I'll start.
I'll just say very quickly
Okay.
that when I was doing my PhD rotations, one of the PIs who I thought was incredible, she's brilliant, she really is wonderful, but when we were having that discussion at the end of the rotation of like, oh, are we choosing each other? I mentioned, I would like there to be a large or some kind of science policy component to my PhD, or that's like a really strong interest of mine, and her response was kind of just, we don't really do that here, so obviously I didn't.
Yeah.
But that's, I don't think that my experience in having that response from a PI is unique. But
yeah.
No, I wish it wasn't real, but JP, we're going to add something.
Yeah, I was just going to answer both of your questions, right? The first one being about, does my PI support this? As someone who is trying to go into academia, I understand that his success is also based off my success, right? So there is a lot of trust there that you have to build with, between the mentor and mentee. And I think that needs to be acknowledged more in these conversations, right? It is about incentive, right? My PI can't go where he needs to go without my publication, right? So he's incredibly supportive of what I'm doing. Do I feel bad that I'm taking time out of lab, sitting here on this panel, and the only credit he gets today is, I'm in the lab of Doug Fansteel, and I didn't even say that, right? Like, he doesn't even get that credit. Do I feel bad? 100%. And I think that just goes to show what this broader shift needs to look like. It is all about the incentives. And I'm actually going to contest Alex here.
Ooh, fun.
Okay, I was waiting for some excitement.
Yeah, I'm going to contest this, but mostly because I understand science communication and science policy. They're just skills that we need, and I agree that they need to be embedded in what we do. But I think the overall goal, what we want, is to use them as tools to actually go into our communities and do that engagement, right? Like, it is embedding policy and communication, but it's also what is the goal, it is to go out into the things we do science at scale, go into Phoenix, Arizona, and talk to everyone here, right? So I just want to add that. Maybe it's not a contest.
Oh, no. Yes.
Oh, here we go. Yeah,
I love
here
it.
we go.
Yeah, science communication, adding a science communication half credit course is not enough. I'm just giving you a thing to start with on Monday. But that's not enough.
To just tack on one last thing there, I think the reality is that even if the science communication, science policy skills you pick up in that kind of thing, you never use them again in your life. You don't have to become a full-time science communicator, full-time science policy expert. But the reality is that if you're a PI and you've had that education at some point, it's been driven home to you that understanding that is part of what it means to be a scientist, then when you have that grad student come to you and say, this is what I want to do with my life, you're going to be a lot more receptive to that. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I wish these stories you were telling weren't true, but I know from my experience as a provost and also in this job that lots of grad students are feeling like they can't pursue their dreams. And shame on the PIs who are stopping them and the institutions who aren't calling the PIs up and saying, what the hell is wrong with you? Speaking of the institutions, I used to be in administration. I got out of it because I was tired of my lawyer and my PR person stopping me from doing my job. But they've had some rough rides here the last year, and they've probably gotten some things right and some things wrong. And I'm sure you've got some opinions about that. So we're going to start with Alex, and we need to pick up the pace a little bit if we're going to get to all your questions.
All right.
So we can skip one if you want, but if you want to do them all, that's what we need to go a little faster.
Thank you for the warning, because I could talk about this all day. I'll try to be concise. I think there are two main things about this that are salient to me. I think the first is the idea of defending the house while the house is on fire. Personally, so I worked with Yale's government relations team this summer. I interned. I was there with all the chaos and what was happening. And I mean, these are brilliant, capable people running around on defense because the house is being attacked. There was attacks on higher education that we'd never seen before, and it was definitely warranted and fair. And yet, the house is on fire. And it's like we can't defend it by pretending it's not on fire. That there's not some seed of truth and some good faith actors and questions in all of the nonsense that comes out of rhetoric against research and science and higher education. And we have to engage with that. And I think if we don't, we're also neglecting the folks inside the house, the scientists, the early career folks who have been raising the alarm and been saying that the house is on fire for so long, talking about these incentive structures, talking about, we don't feel prepared for the careers we're going to, this has been a conversation for quite some time. And I think there is a moment of opportunity here that we just can't miss. Everyone it's the conversation that the house is on fire. Let's not pretend that it's not. Let's start thinking about where can we take action, and let's not miss the opportunity. I'm deeply afraid that we will. So this group makes me optimistic that we won't, and so let's all work together and make sure that doesn't happen. That's one. Two is, and I'll let y'all really go into this because I'll stop yapping. But I think, the second thing is thinking about engagement with the public. I mean, we're having talk series, really, about public trust in higher education, which is the most academic thing I've ever heard, right? You get a bunch of academics sitting around academically talking about mistrust in academia, and none of the public is present. So, thinking about how do we actually talk together, work together, and build infrastructure together, and take action on public trust in higher education, I think is the moment we're at right now. The talk series, for me, is, sure, we're acknowledging, we're bringing attention to it within our community, but I mean, it's not a solution.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would have to add here is, I think, I go to a lot of these different conferences. We always talk about science communication, science policy, but I keep telling this to people. It just feels like an echo chamber. We're saying the same things over and over again, but what is the actionable thing? What are people in this audience going to do when they get back to their home institutions on Monday? Are they actually going to change their behavior, or are they just going to share what was said at this conference, right? So Alex mentions infrastructure. What does that mean, right? Can you build capacity to maybe get some people to go to local churches around the university that you're at, right? Like, what is the actionable thing that you can get someone to do on your staff on Monday?
Yeah, I'll actually say really quickly, one thing kind of related to that is, when we were doing the McClintock letters, we cold emailed hundreds of people, leaders of, okay, well, yeah, I say we, I definitely did like a lot of that. But leaders of scientific organizations all across the US from all different disciplines, presidents of R1 universities, we emailed deans of different STEM programs at all kinds of universities across the US to say, hey, we have this opportunity for this really incredible science communication initiative that your grad students want to participate in, so please share it with them, basically was what I said, But what was really cool is actually University of Toledo wrote back and was like, oh, that's really neat that you said that you want to do this op-ed thing, because we actually have had a program institutionalized for the last 10 years in which I want to say it was every week or maybe every month, they have one of their later stage grad students write an op-ed for the Toledo local paper talking about who they are as a scientist and explaining what their research is and the value to the general public of their research. And I was like, oh wow, okay, you guys have it figured out. You have this institutionalized program that you do regularly that gives scientists, early career researchers, an avenue for public-facing science communication. Incredible, great, okay, let's just get everybody to do that. Easy, problem solved, right?
Okay, wonderful. Well, when y'all are ready to be provost, let me know. I'll work the phones for you.
How young are you looking?
You're already old enough. Now what about the scientific societies? You've got the whole board of the AAAS and the CEO sitting here. You probably got some thoughts about the things that they've been doing the last year. So, don't hold back, mix it up. Alex. No pressure.
Yeah. Hi. No, I think, admittedly, this question is harder to answer than the last. And I think that in and of itself is data. That's telling. And I think that's because when you think about we've talked a lot about really co-design as JP. I love a good keyword from you. Loves to tell me all the time.
I'll talk about it later.
Oh, you'll talk about co-design.
I got you. Yeah.
I'll let you talk about co-design. But yeah, thinking about engagement, bidirectional, forming infrastructure together. I don't know enough about how scientific societies function and what resources are there in order to do that with you. And I think that is something that in and of itself is very telling. With universities, I mean, we work there. We're there every day. We don't always answer our emails or read them, but emails from our university could include a thesis defense of our friends down the street. It could include a safety warning about something going on campus. We're aware of what's going on with our university. The email from our scientific society is, oh, is the annual meeting coming up? Oh, great, I should submit my poster. And if you're already policy-minded, you might open the advocacy alerts. But the conversations of, but what can we do? And what's happening and how does this affect us? That's not happening in our email inbox. And I think you're already, unfortunately, at a disadvantage in that, how do you get there, right? How do you get past the email inbox into these labs where people are having these conversations? And I think it's through working with grassroots organizations who are there, getting champions and advocates and networks in the lab, creating open access material, and working together to kind of bridge that gap. But that's what I would say is just step number one, is we need to be more in community with each other to even begin to answer that question.
Yeah. I do think one gap a place that I think scientific societies could really shine is filling a gap that universities can't as easily, which is, when I talk to graduate students about having meetings with their legislators, I say, partnering up with a patient can be really impactful for that advocacy meeting because it helps give context to the research that you're doing, it helps demonstrate impact, and you can tell great stories there. And the grad student says, oh, that sounds great. I work with cells. And how do I meet those people? How do I connect with those people? So if you're, Society for Neuroscience, for example, and you are partnered with the Alzheimer's Association, patient advocacy organizations that represent people that have lived experience that's relevant to your research, you can be a hub for those students. You can be somewhere where they can turn reliably to meet people, to connect with people on a shared goal. And I think that's really powerful walking into an advocacy meeting.
Yep.
Thanks, Andrew.
That's right.
JP, you gonna add something to that? Or Miles is?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll add another point to this that I think is especially relevant for what scientific societies have and have not been doing over the past year, which is that when I think back to February and the months that followed that, and the amount of uncertainty there was in the scientific world, what I at least was looking for from scientific societies more than anything else was clarity. I would say clarity and leadership. You know, that's part of why coming to AAAS annual meeting last year was so cathartic, because it felt like that kind of clarity was on display, oftentimes both on the large stages, and I think of Sudeep saying, RFK Jr. is not the right person to be leading HHS. Like that feeling of speaking reality into existence, saying this thing that we're all thinking. But then also the small stages, the kinds of conversations that led to the formation of SNAP, the feeling that you're finding like-minded people. I think that sort of acknowledgement of reality can be very powerful when it feels like you don't really know what reality is. Conversely, I think when a moment that feels like a crisis is met with either silence or with statements that feel like they're either out of step with reality or actively in conflict with it, I think that's something that loses you, frankly, a lot of credibility within your scientific community, even if it is good politics. So that's
Don't y'all want to clap for that? Yeah. All right. Yeah.
And just to add really quickly onto that, I don't think that means that scientific societies need to become partisan.
No, absolutely not.
I think we were talking about, maybe a litmus test to responding to these things happening is, does it impact or, does it intersect with your mission statement?
Does it align? Yeah.
Does it align?
Yeah,
It doesn't
there's
require
more to,
partisanship.
Yeah, there's more to supporting neuroscience or genetics research than just making sure papers get published, making sure labs are in connection with each other. You have to be willing to act to create an environment in which that research can thrive. And I think that means clarity, that means leadership.
I just want to say another thing is the process of co-design that Alex is bringing up, right? Bringing us into the room and giving us a seat at the table. Because, the more that I'm in these rooms, I'm like, oh, cool, I'm in the room, let me speak my mind. And then it's like I hear about another convening with other people up top, and I'm like, wait, but the point is to co-design with us, right? So when I think about what society is going to be doing, give the voice to your members, right? We're all here, we're ready to go, we're going through it. And when you think about people that are in leadership positions at all these different societies, the last time they might have touched the pipette was like, I don't want to say too, like, what's a good
30 years
30 years ago, right? So it's trying to think about that and really thinking about how society is moving, right? We know that 30 to 40% of PhDs are going to academia. And I really, appreciate when societies are offering SciComm and science policy. I guess the point there I want to make is it shouldn't just be Alex Rich that you're tapping into because she has all this policy experience, right? The reason why we created SNAP is so that we can get people like Alex Rich to teach the entirety of SNAP, the 200 members, right? So it's all about peer education as well. Let us co-design with you as a society, and we got you. We will educate our peers and really make this a tight-knit community. So that's really all I have to say about it.
All right. Okay, we're in great shape on time. What are SNAP's plans for the future, and how do they fit in with how you all see the culture of science policy and engagement evolving? Last question, give everybody a chance. We're going to start with Izzy.
Yeah, so for some plans for the future, I'll start with talking about plans for the present, something we're working on right now, Stance on Science, which is a nationwide initiative in which we as early career researchers are designing questions through the lens of early career researchers to ask of candidates for public office across the US at different levels. We will be collecting their responses and hopefully hosting town halls as well, and making their responses digestible for the general public and trying to get the conversation about science policy and science more into voters' minds. We'll also be publicizing their responses, via social media and reaching out to local media. We currently have, I think we're missing like 15 states that we still need leaders in. Right now we have 35 states that we have leaders in to run this initiative.
let's see. Oh, we're also developing an open access science policy course. So that's really terrific. You can hopefully look forward to that coming out in the next probably couple months, month or two, yeah. We also have a science policy hackathon that we'll be doing. So it'll be at different institutions, again, across the US. That's going to be later this spring. Also very much, oh, sorry, one more thing, the blog that we recently started, where we're giving opportunities to early career researchers to publish on different science policy topics. So that's actually on Medium. You can find us there. And speaking in the very much now, you can come talk to us at booth 605 and learn a little bit more about all the cool things we're doing. Yeah. And also come to the reception that we have tonight. It's in Salon 8 at 8 p.m. tonight, so you can register for that, and please come join us. Come talk to us. Yeah, I guess let somebody else pick up.
Yeah, I do want to say that I think the reception will be a good time to get us in a candid manner, because we talk about this stuff. This is still kind of muzzled. I feel like this version was still a little bit like, we could have went, you know, but
I'm trying as hard as I can.
I know, yeah, I am also guilty of that. But I guess I'll just say, I think the future of science, it's not directly going to come from all the laboratories that we're in, the legislators' offices that we are entering, right? It's going to come from the people in this room, right? It's going to come from my new best friend, Izzy, my new best friend, Aaron, my new best friend, Miles, my new best friend, Alex, my new best friend, Holden, right? So.
Just let him hang. He was trying to fist bump.
Oh, did you try to fist bump?
Yeah, come on, there we go.
Yeah, that's my bad. That's my bad. Yeah, but the future of science is really in this room. Like, I can tell you right now, all 4 of these rows that are Snap, you could have switched me out with any of them, and they would have had the same exact thoughts. Yep. Maybe even more unmuzzled than me, right? So I just want to end with that whatever you guys do on Monday, please try to change that behavior and think about, what do the people that I'm serving, what do they need right now? And obviously co-design with us, right? We have students from how many institutions? Over 30, over 20?
It's 20, probably over 30 by now.
Yeah, like we're all over the
Hard to
place.
keep track, we grow fast.
We have representatives from 24 institutions that just came to SNAP.
Right.
So we have, 24 different institutions.
And we're all coming with all these different experiences.
Yeah. And all different fields, all different,
Yeah. So I guess to the Science Society question, Sudip, Holden, whoever else is on the board, please come to the reception and literally talk to everyone there. Because if you think we're impressive, I'll tell you right now, they're very, very impressive.
And tell us what time it is again.
It's 8 p.m. In Salon 8 at the
Renaissance Hotel.
The Renaissance.
Yeah, and then you go right downstairs to the Sci-Pol Shindig.
Yeah.
So please help us build the future of science, because we're the next generation.
Amen.
Let us get there.
Yeah.
All right, let's give it up for Snap, everybody. Okay, this is the end of the session. Go out and do more stuff. And don't forget about the reception tonight at 8 o'clock. All right.